Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is The Enthusiasm Project, Season 3, Episode 14. And today we're doing something we've never done before. And I say we because it's not just me here. I am joined by my lovely wife, Heather Ramirez. And I am also joined by a fabulous, outstanding, super talented artist, content creator, creative, Kevin Ramirez, and another super talented, creative podcaster, Twitch streamer, digital entrepreneur, enthusiast, Dan Moore. And I just wanted to get everybody's names out there first, and then we'll dive in, and you'll get to know everyone. And my big goal here, there's two goals actually. The first one is that I feel lucky to know all of these people, and a podcast is a great way to force everyone to talk to me about this stuff. And the second thing is that I have come to learn that a number of people who listen to this show are people who make stuff, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc. And I hope that we can kind of dive into an interesting conversation that's helpful if you're someone who makes something, but also by the time you're done listening, you'll kind of have that fire of like, I gotta go make something right now. So that's what we're going to jump into. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So many voices. We've never had this many voices here before. So let's quickly go around the table and just like everybody here, I sort of hear an echo. I hope it's not too insane, but everybody here is a content creator of some kind. Let's just quickly figure out like who you are and the main things that you create, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. I'm just going to go clockwise from me. I'm at the end of the table. So let's start with my lovely wife, Heather.
That's me. So I've been on the podcast before. Hi, guys. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather, and I started creating on YouTube in 2016. And now I primarily do YouTube coaching, help people share their stories on YouTube. And I did start out actually with a podcast that I only recorded one episode of and totally forgot.
It was pretty kickback, though,
Yeah.
that podcast.
Yeah. But I have two YouTube channels. One's a tutorial channel for people who want to do YouTube, and then one's a vlog documenting my journey as an entrepreneur. And a lot of Tom's journey as a byproduct
Right.
of that journey.
That's me.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm a byproduct of your channel. But now, of course, I will put links to everybody's stuff in the show notes so you can check them out if you want to. Kevin, who the heck are you?
Hi, everyone. So this is my first time on a podcast. I've never done this before.
So crazy.
It is. I know this is really crazy. Got this big thing in front of my face. So I am by trade, I'm like a graphic designer, kind of a creative that uses just creative programs. But I started creating content a few years ago, just like doing it on Instagram. Actually, this kind of goes all the way back to the days of Zanga.
Wow.
If I wanted to really think about it, I was really obsessed with graphic design, but the way to get interested was actually going on a social media platform, which was at the time like Zanga. This was before MySpace. And then, you would just use that as a funnel to just create graphics with these creative programs, and then, kind of put it away. But then most recently, I've been doing YouTube from the introduction of you guys to kind of do a format where I record and edit. And a lot of it is based in creative experimentation because there's so many things that I wanted to learn creatively, not just graphic design, but there was things like motion graphics or 3D or creative artificial intelligence. Like there were so many things I wanted to learn, so I wanted to use the channel as a way for me to document my experimentation, but then also hopefully introduce people that, hey, this is what you can do with these topics that they're pretty big, but they're also really accessible to just any kind of normal person. And I also did well, I hope
they're
that's
accessible, but usable. Yeah. That's different. But your channel's been growing. It's only been a few months, and it's every time I look at it, it's grown significantly. So I think you should be proud of that.
Thank you. I think I think it's hopefully a healthy rate, but it's been really encouraging and really exciting that there are people there actually watching, and it's I mean, even if they weren't, it's still really fulfilling to me. But I do hope that their takeaway is that they can go off and create more. So yeah.
All right, Dan, tell us about you. Who are you? What do you do? Just the basics, then we'll dive in deep.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Tom. This is really exciting. I was really excited when you suggested joining you on the podcast, because just based on your YouTube videos, I know I'm just so impressed always with your setup.
That's right.
But now I get to actually kind of use it. It's really exciting to me. But as far as it being like a digital creative, is that kind of what you're...
Whatever you want to take my description of, as someone who just creates things to share with the world in some way, because you do multiple things, however you want to approach it.
All right, got you. So that's really interesting, because all my life I've been really interested in storytelling, and I always wondered where's a way or a platform that I can use to tell stories, which one that I think is accessible to me, meaning which one can I learn easily enough and just jump in and do it.
Yes.
I was a little late to the game for YouTube, I feel when that was really hot, around 2009, 2010, where it was just really
uncharted territory.
Exactly.
Stuff growing crazy.
I watched it back then, but I was too late. And it wasn't until about 2016 where I was working at I was working as a temporary worker at an insurance company, filling out forms for people. It was real temporary job, but I had a lot of downtime. And so I would listen to a lot of podcasts.
Right.
And as I was listening to them, I kind of started to ask myself, or I just kind of started to realize, wait, I think I could do this. I could do something like this. And it did for me at the time. I had to learn what web hosting was. I had to learn how to build a website. I wanted to do it all right. And so I wrote out just a list of things I wanted to do. So I made the podcast, the Just One Thing podcast. And then later that year partnered with a friend of mine and made a video gaming podcast, a news talk podcast. And that was great learning experience, a lot of fun. That kind of led into, my Twitch channel, which I'll go into more detail later about, but that was where I really built a online community just based off of the digital entertainment kind of thing.
Yeah, it just sort of happened organically. That's what you just said is one of those things where I'm always curious. This happens to some people and it just doesn't happen to others, which is you consume something, you appreciate it. And for some people, I think for all of us here and probably a lot of people who are listening, the thing sparks where you're like, I feel like I could do this, or I want to do this. I want to do something like that. And then I've known other people that just doesn't, I don't mean this as a critique, but that just doesn't happen. They're just that was cool to go see that band play. I have no interest to ever pick up a guitar or anything, and I'm just going to go do my own thing. And I don't know what it is, but I think there's something that some people have where when that thing hits, you can't really ignore it. Heather's trying to sneak our dog out very discreetly. And I think though, when the thing that's always excited me about the internet and creating stuff online is how accessible it is, because you can have those thoughts and you can have those feelings and you can actually go do it. You can go make a podcast. And I mean, to me, that's always just been something that's super exciting. And I feel like both of you guys have that same enthusiasm for your projects, one might say. Let's talk a little bit about Twitch, because you mentioned Twitch, Dan, and I don't know much about it. Heather and I have experimented with it a little bit, but you and Kevin have both many hours working and building on Twitch. You've gone to TwitchCon, you understand that platform in a way that I don't think a lot of people do. How did you get started with Twitch? Why would you choose, streaming on Twitch versus streaming on YouTube or something like that?
Well, the first time I ever really started to watch people play video games on Twitch was back in 2013, the fall of 2013. I I started going to twitch.tv to watch speed runs of Super Mario Sunshine. And I was just so impressed and amazed at how quickly people were running through that game. And I just was transfixed. And then I just kind of like noticed that there's like a live chat happening on the side of this person who's playing this game. And as a lifelong gamer, I thought, this is so cool. Like, you don't always get to play games that are multiplayer, but you can, but this is a way for you to play those single player games and also have like an audience and be playing with people. And I was envious of that person's ability or whatever tech he had that was allowing him to do that, because back at that time, I didn't understand how he was able to capture the gameplay onto his computer and then broadcast that onto Twitch. I didn't understand like the workings behind it. I just knew it was something that immediately interested me.
Especially back in like 2013, that it's not as easy as it is in 2020.
Like into the platforms now.
Yeah, because that's what you started with your PS4, right?
Exactly. And that's a really good point, because in order, I had done the math and realized that in order for me to be able to have like a PC that was capable of like live streaming, it was going to cost me a lot that I just didn't have at the time. However, a couple of years later, I ended up, buying a PlayStation 4. This was like around Christmas of 2015. It was at a more reasonable price at that point because it had already been out for like 2 years. And when I purchased the PlayStation 4, it was strictly for gaming. I didn't realize that the PlayStation 4 had the ability to broadcast to platforms like Twitch or YouTube from the system itself.
And that's crazy. It's just the gameplay. Obviously, there's no camera, right?
At first, that's what I thought. But then I learned also that you can get the PS4's camera peripheral and like use that as the camera. And I originally, the reason why I made a Twitch channel was because I was playing the original Final Fantasy VII on my PlayStation 4, and I live on the other side of the country from my family, and I remembered back in the day how my little sister Sarah and I she would just watch me play Final Fantasy VII all the time, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun if she could just kind of watch me play this?
Right.
And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm just going to set up this like Twitch channel and I'm going to broadcast here. If you go here, you can like watch me play this game again, like the old days. And so it started out with just a way for me to like play this game with my sister, quote unquote, and she did. She like hopped on the Twitch channel that I quickly made, and watched me play this game. And then all of a sudden, like other random people were dropping in and like into the live chat. And I didn't know what I was expecting. I guess, I didn't like have a private channel or anything. So I just kind of started to talk to them. And for the next like 2 years, I streamed a lot of games off my PlayStation 4.
That's crazy, but you're 100% right. Because when you make stuff, I'm putting it on the internet and people can see it. But then there's that disconnect, especially when you're just getting started, because people aren't necessarily watching right away. And then suddenly like someone you don't know reaches out and you're like, what? Oops, I'm getting a phone call. And then you're like, why is this happening? And then you remember, oh yeah, it's not just my little world. It's the whole greater world. Kevin, how did you, I don't mean to limit. So if I'm like, tell me about Twitch, and you're like, I would actually prefer to talk to you about Blender or something.
Oh no.
By all means. But I'm curious because you've done Twitch too, but you've done not just gaming on Twitch.
Yeah. So it's funny because, when I didn't really start thinking about making any kind of like long form content until Twitch, and Dan is actually the one who introduced me to Twitch. Before that I had gone on board with social media like Instagram, making like, an Artstagram or, on Facebook or Pinterest, but I never really thought of making videos because from my perspective as a designer, that never really made sense until now. You see these process videos that people are making like on Procreate and which is that iPad application. But before, it wasn't really a thing. People would just post a picture and be like, that's what I created today.
Right.
But then, when I noticed that Twitch actually had a creative section, that was weird to me because I was like, I thought Twitch was only for video games. And I only knew Twitch because of like, really big, streamers would have a certain persona that I thought that was the only thing that they did. But then I realized that they have everything, but the creative community wasn't actually as big back then. And there was only a lot of people doing like artist stuff. And I figure, maybe this is a good way for me to like jumpstart, creating like something a day, but then also doing it live on the internet. So you can kind of show like, the story behind creating or designing whatever piece you're making. And the thing is, I had already been streaming video games with Dan on his channel, as like a special guest or something. But I wanted this to, try it differently. And then, so that was only one aspect of the content, but then I would also, do crafting, because at the time I had my business Hunter, which, created these handmade bracelets. So I'd also do like, braiding my bracelets on stream. People would come into the chat, and it was like such a weird thing because, when you create handmade anything, you usually are super lonely because you do it like by yourself. You're not really talking to anyone. So when I would do it on stream and I would be making the bracelets, it's kind of fun because people would come in and it would be like, oh, you're making my bracelet right now. And like, I am. And like, you kind of just chat with them.
The bracelet that they had purchased.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it kind of added value to the fact that like, they saw you making it, but then you were also able to interact with them. So it was like, wow, this is, it's not like I was trying to be a conniving business person, but at the same time, it also made me feel better about like selling something that I cared about, because, you actually had a relationship with the customer. So it was so odd because I realized it kind of opened my eyes that like, wow, I could do all of the things that I like and actually live stream it. And, I'll still be able to get that social interaction that you get, or that I would have loved to get back then when I was actually starting off. But yeah, so then, but I soon after that, I think this was about like 2018, I actually got a job at like my dream job, my ultimate dream job, as a Walt Disney Imagineer. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, it was kind of a fluke accident because it came out of nowhere.
That's a big thing to have on your resume as like, oh, also in addition to my Twitch stream.
I had been wanting, you guys know, that was like literally my lifelong dream was to be an Imagineer, grew up with it. So, although it was a great learning and fun experience doing Twitch and doing my crafting my bracelets, and then also doing my graphic design and, just becoming a better creative there. I couldn't turn this down. So unfortunately I had to like really slow down the bracelet making and the live streaming and the graphic. So I kind of had to like step away from, doing content, but ever since COVID hit,
COVID's been great for content creation.
It's been fantastic for content creation. So it's funny though, because I actually didn't, I still do, live streaming, but via, Dan's channel whenever, he has a game that, would be fun to play. But I now have switched over to YouTube because I guess, again, I really loved the job that I was at. It was like such a dream come true, but it was also that I didn't have a lot of time to learn new creative skills I wanted to dive into. So there was like, so many emerging things in augmented reality and so many new applications I wanted to try out. And the position I was in was not, it wasn't a strictly designer role. It was like a multifaceted, like I would, have to be running around picking up other duties. So I didn't have the time to dedicate really to other learning opportunities. So now that, COVID and now that we have the time, like I was able to really just take that time to learn these things like Blender. And, it's been such a great time and it's been such a fantastic learning experience that the best way for me to document it and to kind of showcase what I've been learning was kind of YouTube, where I could actually record it and then edit it and then upload it. And it was a really great way for me to remember what I learned because, when you're just like learning something and you don't write it down or you don't look back on it or think back on it, you forget it. Yeah. You just like, oh, well, it just like disappeared. Sometimes that'll even happen to me. Like I had just, but it helps to record it. So, I mean, it's kind of a way for me to remember, but also hopefully provide inspiration or entertainment to anyone interested in the same things that I am in.
Well, it also is like a pretty awesome portfolio piece. I know obviously your portfolio and your resume are are good already, but like this is this active thing that kind of shows. One of the things I've always admired you for is that you just dive into different stuff. It's not like, oh, I only do this, and so this is the only thing I focus on. But you'll be like, oh, I'm interested in learning Blender, so I'm just going to learn Blender. And it's not because like I need to for a job. It's not because that's going to bring in money. It's just because there's an interest there and it's creative. And you kind of never know, like 5 years from now, something could happen that connects the dot to a Blender thing.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's kind of where I really want to go. And just as growing in professionally as a designer, I think that's probably the best skill that anyone needs to pick up is learning. And I think that, I've worked in corporate for a very long time, and I've already seen kind of the creatives in corporate and how they operate. Some of them are really good at what they do, but I know that because there's such a routine where, you're kind of put in a position where you need to produce a certain thing, like for, an extended period of time, to where, your personal growth may suffer and you may not be able to be that amazing creative that you were the year before. So I think that it's so important that for any creative to kind of like get that mentality. And the wonderful thing is that this last job that I had, that was kind of the environment. It was like, I need you to create this augmented reality projection on this wall. I don't, figure it out. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. And I was like, what? And then I had to learn how to program. It was so mind boggling, but these people were so incredibly talented. They could literally make a robot in like a week, like a prototype. And I was like, how are you guys able to do this? And it was like such an amazing culture that it applies to anything, like especially the creative community. Like, look, I understand you don't need to learn Blender or modeling or this, but the thing is, like, as long as you could just figure it out, it can apply to so many different things in your life.
Yes.
So, application.
Yeah. And just being the person that, like, I don't care if you know how to use this application right now, but what I care is if I say, hey, we need to do an AR projection on a thing, you'll figure it out. Yeah. I don't care how you figure it out.
Do
exactly. Go to askjeeves.com and type it
just
in. But
do whatever you need to, Google whatever, just get the result done. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it may not be perfect, but you learn something. Right. And you learn how to kind of just, put things together. And so, yeah.
And now I have I have many questions, but one that I have right now, because you were kind of giving us a timeline, Kevin, of what, your process for putting stuff out there. But you also have a big sister who happens to be my wife. So for anyone who didn't know, Kevin is Heather's brother. And I'm curious because both of you guys as siblings started off career-wise on one trajectory, then took a left turn into the world of like creative entrepreneurship, just different from the pre-med path that you had been down before. I'm curious for you, Kevin, how Heather's story and like her decision to leave her job and start her thing, if like what effect that had on you.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I'm so curious to hear what you have to say.
I figured you might want to know the answer to this.
This is very easy to answer, and I could tell you why.
And I'm curious too about Heather's feelings about now her brother, going down this totally different path.
You already know the
answer. I know.
I told you so.
I know. So we both started obviously with very traditional career paths, like doing pre-med, and we were thinking of going down that the way that was told to us. But we obviously
we're first generation immigrant family. Yeah. So pre-med is like the only option.
The works. Yeah. But obviously we ended up picking very different career paths. But even in that, our attempt to, do different things was also very different. And I could just tell you in one sentence, Heather is obviously more daring. I'm the one who played it very safe. So I did a different career path, but like in a very safe way. Heather did a career path. She tried it, but at the same time, she did like what her heart told her to do, which is something that I like takes me a while to do, which is like, that's also kind of my downfall is the fact that, taking risks. I know that's kind of just, what we did, but it always took me a while to get warm up in the water. Heather was like, it's warm enough. Like, I'm just gonna go in. So that's the big difference. And I think that's what has helped me is that, she's been able to influence the way that I go about things, it's like, hey, if
Yeah.
there's something you want to do, go for it. If it's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's even more reason to kind of do it. Then you learn how to be better from it. And I think that's kind of that's pretty much it. Like the answer is right there. I think it's like coaxing me to the other side. Like, this is a great way of thinking. So,
Well, I've been working from home for a while now, as have many people. And I can't hear things, like I can't eavesdrop as much as maybe I'd want to sometimes, but I can hear when you and Heather have conversations and she's in her office and I'm in my office, they're kind of back to back. And I can just hear like, okay, she's talking to Kevin right now. But sometimes like it'll just be at a random time and the conversation will go on for a while, but it's very much like, feedback and discussion about how to do this and what to do this and this path to go down. And that's that kind of constant struggle, which I think is really interesting because, like if I watch your YouTube channel, which as everybody should, and they watch whatever the most recent video is when you go there and you see like, Kevin creates this thing and it's beautiful and takes a bunch of talent and it looks just really like simple and easy. But then to know that there's also a whole journey and a whole struggle behind that. And like you said, you had your dream job and now that is in the past. So what is the world then after the thing that you have, that has been a part of your identity, that's been a goal for so long, and now that's something that's just a box that has been checked? Like, where do you go from there? I think is a very interesting place to find somebody.
That's been such a crisis. I think I'm just kidding. It's not that much. And Dan knows because I've talked to him about this, but like, again, like it's so true. You pointed out that this is literally what I always wanted to do. And then now it's like, well, what next? And so that's the scary thing. But I think the wonderful thing, and as I think all of you can agree, is as long as you are pursuing your interests and pursuing things that you do like, they will fall into place. You'll find out what it is that, you want to do eventually. Just keep doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scary thing is that, it may come down where like, oh, well, doing what I love to do doesn't provide, money or it doesn't, pay the bills. But I mean, I feel like I've done enough of these experiments to know that at the end of the day, if you love doing it so much, there will be a way and it will come. So I know I'm only like 30. But the thing is, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like as long as you just keep diving in that, and that's what I always have to do, is just have to keep focusing on what makes me happy and what I love to do. And that's what keeps me going. And obviously, there's a lot of people who work at a company like Disney and that becomes their identity. And they're like, oh, I'm a lifer and I want to be here forever. And for me, I learned very early on not to associate myself with like,
That's
this is
interesting.
who I am. Yeah, because it's like, they're a business and you have to be professional enough to know that, they need to provide a service. So that comes with like the pros and cons of working at like any kind of corporate company. And so you always need to make sure that you invest in yourself because at the end of the day, you only have yourself. So.
Right. I'm just going to put that on a t-shirt because that's the thing. Like I've always felt that way. And I feel fortunate that like I have a good job, like a traditional job. I have what I feel is a good administration in a good district. So, better than the people who complain a lot. If something were to happen to me, my position would be filled within the week. So it's not like you can break your back over this stuff, and you can build up this thing, but all that energy is going to somebody else's thing. And I think that investment in yourself is really key. And you never know how it's going to pay off. Because just before we were recording this, Dan, you were telling us like your podcast that you were doing and, you like this passion project, basically you said ended up being like one of the key factors to getting like your current position that you're in now, which is not related to podcasting really at all.
No, that's right. But what it was the people that were interviewing me for my current position, I think that since I put it on my resume, I put that I had put it on.
You should.
And I mean, at first I wasn't sure if I should or not. And I think it was friends of mine who said, yeah, you need to put that on your resume. And I said, okay, I'll do that. But I think what they did was they checked it out because they still ask me about it. And I haven't produced a new episode on that particular podcast in a while, but they went and checked it out. And I still support my podcast because I still pay for the web hosting and everything every year. So I still am like
sustaining it.
Yeah, I'm still sustaining it. So when I doubt whether or not I should do that, or when I doubt whether or not I should return to the podcast, I always go, well, I think there's a part of me that doesn't want to return to it because I still pay for it.
You haven't let it go.
Exactly. If I really didn't care for it anymore, I would have stopped doing that. But I still really care for it, and so it's still available for people to hop in and check out. And I think that they saw that. And they saw that I was capable of like learning these, teaching myself these skills, going out and finding the answers to my questions. That turns out it's really easy to use the internet to learn things
for free half the time.
For free most of the time, and I think they just appreciated the fact that I took that initiative and kind of did it on my own and like put it together and put it out there. So I think that really helped.
I think Dan is a wonderful example of, you were saying that you heard podcasts listening at a job and you were thinking like, hey, I could actually do this. And, you identified with being a storyteller to actually making something like really awesome. Like, I think totally. your podcast is like fantastic. And the
it's
fact
definitely
that,
another level.
Yeah. The fact
it's one thing to be like, no offense to our podcast,
none
are
taken.
both like sitting at the table and just talking, but
no, people know like I don't edit this podcast.
Yeah, but there's editing, there's writing, there's research, there's music, there's
it's very story driven, like immersive actually.
Yeah,
and I think
very impressive.
When you put it's like a true testament to when you put your mind to it and you really apply everything that you love. You can happen to get a wonderful but
you know what also is? It's also like, because you said, it's so easy to learn anything on the internet. We all can learn the same things, but it's interesting how everyone here at the table has a different medium, a different platform, tells very different stories. We tried Twitch.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't work.
I did one. I was like changing my guitar strings.
I want to revisit.
I was like repairing guitar stuff, and like people were popping in and out.
Yeah.
And it was cool, but
it's just funny to see like how, there's definitely like a personality or preference where you just fall into like creating on this platform or creating this type of medium.
Yeah.
And, someone who's super talented in one medium could be like a total bust.
And that's also because I see this, Heather, with your clients. A lot of times people will come to you and they'll be like, I want to get on YouTube and I need to figure out my Instagram, my Twitter, and my TikTok and my MySpace and my Friendster and my whatever. And it's like, they just feel like because there's all these platforms, they have to master all of them.
Yeah.
And I think it really is like, they all do different things. They all allow you to express yourself differently. Maybe you can monetize it. Maybe you can't. But it's
I think it's worth trying everything till you find the one that
sticks.
really fits.
Yeah. And it is very much like Cinderella and the shoe. Like it eventually just like something is like, this feels right for what I want to make. And that's a really that's a really exciting, good feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. With the podcast, it was, for my podcast episodes ended up being roughly like 15 minutes each average.
15 really highly produced minutes.
They were very brief, but I like justified that in my head by thinking, people will listen to this in their short commute to work, maybe, or back home from work or something. Those people who are lucky enough to have like a 20-minute commute, to and from work.
Not in LA.
Not in Los Angeles, yeah. But that's what my mind was thinking, because it was probably 20 additional hours a week on top of whatever job I was working at the time to do those episodes.
Yes.
And that was a lot of it was like Heather pointed out, just like the research, the writing of the episode, recording the copy, maybe re-recording it because I'm not a sound engineer. I'm not you, Tom. I'm
not either. I just have toys.
I don't know. Your YouTube channel, if I had your YouTube channel like a few years ago, it would have made it so much easier. Level. Yeah.
Put that in the
quote. I like it. Testimonial. 10 out of 10.
Yes. But it was trying to trial and error, kind of figuring things out on my own. And I definitely can hear like, even over the span of like the year and a half that I was like producing episodes for this podcast, the quality did improve. Mm-hmm. That was only because I was like learning as I was going along. But it was all kind of like one of those, I haven't yet done any of the what are they? Those like media courses you can take online that you hear advertised, like Skillshare or something.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I haven't done any of those, and I think they're so interesting. I would love to like do like a Skillshare class or something sometime, because I'm sure I would learn a lot. But it felt like I was doing like a 1.5 year long Skillshare course on creating a podcast on my own.
Yeah, because you were. I mean,
Yeah.
that is literally what was happening. But all of those skills, I don't know, they just come together and it's fun. But you brought up a point too. You and I have full-time jobs plus our creative things. And then Heather and Kevin do currently like the creative endeavors full-time. And both of those have pros and cons to them.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk to the full-time creatives and just see what it's like to live in that world where there's no problems because you have no full-time job to balance with and everything's just easy because you got all the time in the world. I'm completely not being serious.
So, okay. So my brother's like, oh, I'm a risk taker or whatever. I don't say the con. I guess the consequence of being a risk taker is that you take a lot of risks, and sometimes, you know, you have to deal with the, you know, both the bad and the good. I definitely think it's like, I don't know if I would tell myself back in 2016. Actually, I don't regret anything, but it's been tough, like money wise. And I think that in order for someone to be as creative as they can be, you need to feel free. And financial hardship freaking sucks.
I know,
like,
they say money
like
can't buy happiness, but like...
It is like, it's a different kind. It's like you are being creative, but in like a survival mentality, which is, that's not
counterproductive.
Yeah, exactly. You're not creating your best stuff. You're probably not going to be creating. It's just like a different mindset. And I think that's what I've had to, you know, struggle with. Whereas my brother, who didn't take the risk to stay at corporate, you know, you'd go work on your creative stuff after work. And yeah, of course you have work to, you know, you have someone else who's your boss and you're creating something and putting all this energy into someone else's stuff. But there's definitely me looking at the, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, being like, oh, that would be nice. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, looking back at my 4 years of doing this, the thing that I wish I had set up initially was like stable stream of income. And it was very much like freelance project to freelance project because I didn't know anything about starting a business. My clients ended up steering my business because I would go where the business was. And like I ended up doing stuff that I wouldn't have wanted to do, which even this year I pivoted from doing B to B to B to C. So I don't do marketing for people anymore because I really like, I knew this the whole time, but who am I to say no to like people who are willing to pay me? And I was good at it, you know?
The business side's really confusing because I was thinking just yesterday, I was like, okay, I was thinking of, you know, like you and I have our YouTube channels, which like generate some sort of revenue. And I was thinking of like my high school students that, you know, kids all want to be YouTubers and stuff. And I was like, yeah, there's so much of it is making videos, but then so much of it is like, we had to start our LLC. We had to open up business accounts. You know, you put this money here and then you save this much for taxes and they have to do your taxes this way. And then you have to do things off and create this spreadsheet here. That has nothing to do with like, I'm going to set up my camera and get this cool
let me
angle.
set up my background or whatever. Like there's this whole other side that I definitely had to learn as I went. And, you know, I remember probably like a year in, there was a point where I was like, oh, because my YouTube channel started to pick up and I was like, I'll do the full-time vlogger thing. But even that was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, how,
right. Okay. How do
at what point do I get the check? You know, like, I don't understand. So what I've been working on in 2020 is setting up, like building the foundation for a sustainable business so that I can, be creative, and the creative part contributes to the business. And I think that's where everyone wants to get when they're creating content online, is like you're in this position where, you know, there's money coming in that's stable, where you don't have to sacrifice integrity and your values for the content that you're creating. So you're not selling out or whatever, or being sponsored every video and all of that. And
my favorite thing in the world. Yeah.
You're still able to create like exactly what you want to create, how you want to create it. And all of the things that you create funnel your passion. It took forever. Like I just finished on Friday. It is Sunday.
It is it's very interesting because I mean, you make a great point about the safety aspect. I've had to learn that a lot of people approach this very differently, and I've had to learn a lot about myself in terms of what my brain likes and what it doesn't like and what it's comfortable with. Like, I mean, I learned very quickly, especially just any kind of in creative team, like you can't put your creatives under stress because they can't create. Like, and whatever they turn out, it just turns out really bad. And then that means that there's a lot more criticism, a lot more notes. And just at the end of the day, you're just not happy with it. And it's creative that wasn't produced with the best creative, essentially. So what I realized is, for me, I actually need a routine. And safety is a big thing. Like, I think that if I'm being creative and I just don't have a schedule, or if I don't have routine, I get depressed very quickly. Very depressed. Like, I remember there was this one video recently that I worked on for a very long time because I was doing a lot of testing with, you know, just new functionalities. This is the Haunted Mansion one. Like, it was an awesome piece for me, but I was testing out like lattice armature animation with like glass and transparence and translucency. And
Oh, yes,
just,
of course, yes.
Yeah, like,
it
I
was
don't
just
know
like,
what this means.
it was a lot of like, and then cloth dynamics with wind physics. Like, it was a lot of like complicated things I hadn't really gone into. But I think if I had a schedule and I knew what I was doing and I was working towards something, which is why it kind of leads back to the safety thing, where it's a lot of people, you know, they like to have that job because it's that routine semblance in their life, and then they can go home and then work on their personal things, and they kind of wake up and do the same thing the next day. And it's that safety, that routine, that constant that they have. But when you don't have a constant, my mind easily goes to like worry and anxiety, and then that is almost replaces the time that like the lack of free time that I had with
worrying.
With worrying.
Yeah.
And so it's just,
so instead of like a 40-hour job, you're just 40 hours of worrying.
And then you just feel like you haven't really accomplished much. But again, I think there's ways to like combat that, where, you know, you just gotta write something out, you gotta do some whatever meditation you need to do, you gotta, you know, it's really requires someone with a strong mind in order to pursue your interests with the utmost discipline. Because I think that if you don't, you literally will just spiral off the track, and then, you know, by the time you know it, you'll need to get a job. Like, you'll need to find a way, just to survive. And like 5 months have passed.
I've got a couple of questions for you. First of all, the first question is, like, have you yet like kind of described what your YouTube channel is here, and like explain how that developed into what it is, or what it is now currently? And the second question is, given everything you've just said, as like a full-time creative now, how do you keep yourself from like overworking? Like, when does the workday end for you? If ever, does it not end for you? And do you think that that's a problem? Are you totally okay with that?
I think that, so again, the past few weeks or past few months I've been doing this. And even during the Twitch days of making bracelets and stuff, like, you got to make your own schedule where you do end at a certain time and like you start at a certain time. So whether that be like, you know, wake up at 6 or 7 a.m., you work for 8 hours or 9 hours. The thing is that like when you do your own creative endeavors, it's almost very similar to freelancing. I used to freelance a lot. I used to have like 3 to 4 clients, but I was only productive in the nighttime. So I was like a night owl, and I would have the most weirdest hours. Like, I would work from like 2 a.m. to 4, go to sleep, wake up at 11, you know, and then like work on a different, like, it was just so haphazard. It was all over the place. And that's all obviously not conducive when you are, or to a lifestyle where you focus on your own thing. You know, like, it may work for freelancing, but it's not going to work for whatever goals that you have, because you'll just get burnt out, exhausted, and other responsibilities, whether it be like friends, family, relationships, like, they kind of just like,
sustainability is key.
Exactly. Yeah. So you just always want to make sure that, you know, you keep a healthy, you know, lifestyle, you know, you're keeping yourself well, you know, you have that routine that you enforce on yourself in place. And then I guess your first question about or what was it? It was like,
Yeah, I was just, because I don't know if we had a chance yet for you to introduce maybe I totally blanked out when you did, but like your current like project, like what is this current YouTube project that you've been working on the past like 6 months?
Yeah, so I guess like it's just more experimentation.
What's the name of your channel?
Oh, my Kevin Ram. Well, meaning Kevin Andrew Ramirez.
Links will be in the description. Don't worry.
Yeah. So it was, again, like I was saying, like the best designer, in my opinion, is someone who's just willing to learn just all creative mediums, whether that be like, digital, but also can you actually use an X-Acto knife to cut paper? Or like, can you be creative with like crafts and something handy or airbrushing? Like, just I think that to being a creative, it's so important to actually dip your fingers in all these mediums. And part of that is experimentation, to know if it works for you. And so my channel is more about the experimentation aspect. So right now I'm focusing a lot on Blender because it's an emerging program that I think is getting really popular in kind of the corporate world because it's free. And it's so accessible. Like you could just hand it to each person in your team. They don't need to install it on their computer. It just opens up and it can do so many different things. It can do about 5 programs can do in one. It can do 3D, motion graphics. It can actually do editing. You can do just 2D renderings. Like it's absolutely amazing. And so, and it's just getting bigger, and the community is so loved because it's open source. So they always have conventions every year. The community is so supportive. They want to do the best that they can. And I think it's just like the goodwill that they have to make the best program that they want. So I'm learning that right now. And again, just experimenting, like how can I push this program and what works for me? Because that's important. Like you experiment, but you got to do like what you're interested in. And so, trying to learn, again, like machine learning, which is like a really big topic. That was kind of like the biggest thing I was learning last year, and how I'm putting into application to see like, hey, how can I utilize this for any kind of graphic design utility? And then...
It's always fun hearing Tom try to describe what you do to his mom.
Oh, yes.
I guess basically what I want to do is my whole like one-liner is like become a better creative, but subsaid that's not really said. It's just creative experimentation and kind of allowing people to, hey, you should try this out, because I do paper crafts sometimes. Like I made paper roses on one video because I had never done that before. And it was a video for my parents. I was making an anniversary gift.
That was really cool though.
It was fun. Yeah. I hadn't made a shadow box in a while, but this one was like something a little bit more traditional. And it was like so much fun that I really love working with my hands. And then the other one was like I was designing a print for Heather on Procreate. That was the first time that I had ever done like a full scale illustration on the iPad, and that was kind of a test for me to be like, hey, can I actually do this? And I had been practicing how to like sketch out and draw like leading up to that. So I mean, these projects are a way to challenge me, but hopefully trying to think of other uses for.
So your videos are always really relaxing and chill for me to watch. And I have to be honest, like when I watch your videos, I don't really watch it because I want to learn. I don't want to learn the program because I personally don't necessarily have that desire. Definitely the curiosity, but not like right now in my life, I want to go out and learn how to use Blender, but it's really cool to watch you create something in Blender, and you edit your video in such a way where it's not boring at all. I'm like watching you do something really quickly. I'm going, oh my gosh, he's so amazing. Because I don't know, it's probably a lot more difficult than you make it look in your videos, of course. But you do a really good job of making it look really entertaining and like accessible. It's not necessarily like a tutorial either. It's just...
Yeah, I think that was also the big thing was I wanted it to look accessible. Like, okay, sometimes I see a lot of videos and it seems really intimidating because it's sped up by like 5,000% and they're doing like a million actions at once. But I mean, I'm not going to say like, there hasn't been a format like this, but I guess for the videos that I wanted to make, I didn't want it to seem like too intimidating. I really wanted it to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm extruding this to make it 3D. I'm drawing it out. Like, you know, I really wanted it to be like,
here's my process.
Yeah, here's the process. And for anyone who doesn't know the program, you can follow along to understand like, oh, that came out. Oh, that twisted. Oh, okay, I understand. He's increasing the value of this. Like, so like, you know, you don't know the correct term, but as long as you know that there's something being made, hopefully that'll inspire someone to just
dive
pique their interest. Yeah. Like
But they're not necessarily tutorials either.
No, they're definitely not. I would like to in the future, possibly, but they're definitely just more process oriented.
Yeah, because that's a different thing too. I mean, I think we've all watched the tutorials where it's literally like, click the button, type in this, and you have no idea what you're doing, but you're like, fine, I'll type in -37, and then this thing happens.
The programming stuff.
Yeah, and you're just like, I don't know what I did, but. But it's interesting because those videos on YouTube especially do really well because people need to solve a problem. So how to do this thing in Blender, and then your video could pop up. So I'm sure that you could grow a channel very quickly by doing like Blender tutorials. But I don't know that that's how you would want to grow, because then you're going to be the Blender tutorial guy.
Exactly.
And if you're not into doing Blender tutorials, it's going to suck to be the Blender tutorial guy. And, you know, I think... kind of like Dan said, you can watch the videos without wanting to be like a Blender artist.
It's like your videos. I have no interest in cameras, but I love your videos.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of Luke Towan, my channel that I watch. He's an Australian scale model builder, and his stuff is amazing. And he will go step by step. You cut this foam and you do this, and I'm like, I would like really 45-minute
videos.
Yeah, I would love to like go into his workshop and use those tools to do that. But like, I don't have any of those. Like, I don't have static graphs for my HO scale, whatever. But I'll watch every minute of every video just because it's so fascinating to me. And
going back to what you had just mentioned, Tom, about you don't want to be known as the tutorial video guy right off the bat. That reminds me of a situation that was happening with Twitch too, like in a similar vein, but a different platform. After 2 years of streaming through my PS4, I had to, gotten like a moderately sized audience, but even up to that point, I wasn't like trying to make Twitch a career or anything. I was doing it for fun. Eventually I was able to afford to build a PC of my own that was capable of live streaming, capturing video from video game systems and live streaming games that I would like to play.
So you could be like a legit
Twitch I felt streamer. More legit like a Twitch streamer. Not that streaming from your PS4 doesn't make you legit. I still always recommend people, if they want to try Twitch streaming, do it from your PS4 because it's so easy. But of course, the PC is more powerful and you have more options to present things and make little announcements and borders, and you can make your stream look more personalized.
Hey, your streams are really just like the podcast. They're super engaging. They're just great.
Thank you.
That's all. That's what I'll say.
I have a lot of fun with Twitch, and in 2018, my audience really, when I was able to make it more personalized and a little better quality cameras and stuff like that, it really shot up. And I got I'm not going to say I'm like superstar ninja here, but for me, it was a surprising boom in followers and subscribers and stuff. And I was very happy with it. I was playing the video games that I wanted to play. They're like single player RPGs, a lot of them, but the chat would always be very engaged. And that was who I was. But I've had friends on the Twitch platform whose goal really is they want to become a full-time
So it's just
streamer.
growth, basically.
Yeah, and they do grow and they do really well. But I saw their passion. I knew who they were when they played the games that they really enjoyed playing. And then I saw them as they started to play games that, maybe they enjoyed casually, but they didn't really want to play 8 hours of it a day or with audience participation or have to manage a chat full of, 10 to 16-year-old kids that follow him because he's playing the games that they want to play. Sure, he suddenly got like an influx of viewers, but I could see how taxing it was for him to do something he didn't want to really do. Do something that he didn't want to be known for, but it was making his channel grow. Like his channel grew gangbusters. It was huge. Several thousand new followers and stuff like that. But that was like the example I always went back to when I thought, no, I know my channel is really very modest, but I'm so much more happier on the platform, and I haven't gotten completely burned out yet because I haven't like decided to pursue that aggressively like that. And like I said, the other key thing is that that's not my main source of income anyway. So I'm afforded that opportunity to not be
having the full-time job is rough because of time, and like even if your full-time job is creative and fun, you come home and you're just like, I just want to stop.
You rest.
But now it's like, if I don't use this off time to make something, then my thing isn't going to happen. So that's the flip side of the full-time job gives you that stability and that security, which is very valuable, but also puts it at risk. And I know we were talking about this a while ago. I forget what popped it into my head. But I remember, I think it was when Heather said, I'm always trying to explain to my mom what Kevin does and I can't ever really do it. So she just knows that you're a super nice guy. That's what she knows. So funny. But she has this, I guess I was raised with this idea of like stability first, which is fine because we didn't come from, we came from very modest means, I guess you could say. And so not having stability makes it something that you really, really value, which is really important to me. That's why I went into teaching instead of film school, was specifically like, because I wanted a paycheck that I could count on consistently without having to go, struggle for 10 years before that could happen. But at the same time, there's this thing, because my mom's big push is always like, just, you got 25 more years, then you get this sweet retirement. And I'm like, yes. And, time flies and whatever. And my big drive, which I talked about in an episode of this podcast, like 2 or 3 episodes ago, where I basically was like, over the next few years, I would kind of like to transition. I would really love to work at transitioning towards doing my own thing full time rather than working for somebody else, which was like a very scary thing to just admit or give myself permission to admit. But I think that's what would make me happiest. And I know that, and it is scary it almost feels ungrateful to go in a world where people are struggling to just pay their bills, and you have a job with good salary and benefits, but like it's not enough for you. Like you want something else. It just doesn't feel good. But at the same time, like I don't really want to count on, well, if I just sort of like coast for 20 years or 25 years, then if I'm still healthy and if I'm still alive and if everything is still good, then we can have a little bit of fun for another 10 years until we die, and then the end. I would like to find a better balance, I guess you could say. And so we're coming up on an hour, and not that I wouldn't want to just talk forever. We can talk for 5 more hours. I'm fine with this. But one thing I really wanted to go over, because the 4 of us have such different backstories, such different ways we use our platform, such different goals, is what if we were in charge of, somebody said, hey, I'm going to give you whatever, $2 million a year for the rest of your life, no matter what. Like you can stay in bed all day and you get $2 million a year. So you can create your creative life, or maybe let's put it this way: you have to do something. you can't stay in bed all day, but you get to create your life how you want. What would that actually look like? And I'm very curious, without that money side of like, I know I have to work with my clients, I know I need to like go to work for this much time. Like, what would your time be? For me, and I'll just quickly gloss over it just to give you guys like context, but a couple weeks ago, the episode I was talking about, where I talked about this, my dream goal, which is a big dream, I feel like, is...
I'm so curious about this because I factor into this dream goal.
Yes. It does. It involves, it's just in terms of finances, not like, yes, well, I'm living in the Bahamas.
Yeah, like, I'm like, no. Is that where I'm going to be living too?
Yes.
Like, what are we going to be doing, babe?
Tropical
You're
birds
like really
and pina coladas.
No, well, because what it was it's when I admitted this to myself that this is what I want, the example I used was like, my grandpa fought in World War II and then worked really hard for like 60 years and then retired and did his thing for another like 20 years, 30 years until he passed away. And now I'm over here like, I have a pretty good job teaching digital media, but I want to like do my own thing. And it just is like, you know, I don't know, millennial with your avocado toast kind of situation.
Yes.
But at the same time, the thought was, if I'm going to risk moving away from the thing that I've worked for and built that does have stability and does have that, it's not going to be for something that's as good or worse. It's going to be for something significantly better. And so what that means is, as my like YouTube channel, everything has started generating revenue, that has made me see that, oh, like it can generate revenue without me having to just shill out every sponsorship that shows up or chase every trend or whatever. Like sticking to your authentic values can actually bring something in. It would need to grow like from where it's at right now in terms of revenue, something like 4 or 5 times, you know, to make it sustainable. I don't know if that's possible or not, but it could be. I don't think it's impossible. And then that would not only meet this my current salary, but it would far exceed it. So that way, you know, we could have savings. I could put money towards health insurance, and there's that stability, even though there's instability. It's kind of like factors in for both. And then the number one thing in the YouTube world when people go full time is like, then you could just make videos every day. You can make so much more content in this. And I'm like, I don't actually, maybe once in a while it'd be fun, but I would still kind of like to stick to like one a week and like a podcast episode or two. I don't want to then like be the goldfish that just expands to fill, you know, like I have my job and my channel and that takes all my time. If I just had my channel, that would take all my time. Like Heather doesn't have extra hours in the day. Like you're right, still also super busy, even though like you don't have the traditional job that you're also balancing. So everything can expand. And I was like, okay, so I want to make that income, and also then pare it down where I only need to work 4 days a week and kind of do what Kevin said and keep a traditional schedule. Like, I know it doesn't sound exciting, but like basically, sure, whatever it is, Monday through Thursday, work 9 to 5, 8 to 4, something like that. And then just the other 3 days a week, not touch it. Just have 3 days off and hang out. And this is where we can go on our trips together and, you know, we can exercise and visit people and not work and then come back to it kind of feeling refreshed. That's sort of like my dream situation, which feels lofty, but also doesn't feel like, I don't know, I'm not sitting on a gold-plated jet boat, like in my own private river or something. Like I don't know if a gold-plated boat would actually
that
float.
Would be a little,
but maybe. But anyway, that's my like, you know, the time to really focus and without pressure, create the things I want to do, work on the business end of it, and then still have plenty of time to just have a normal life is ideal to me. Like the more that I can use my time how I want to use it, to me, that's a very big gauge of success. So that was a long way of asking, what's yours?
Me?
Sure. Yeah. Heather, let's start with you.
Okay. So this is an interesting question because my goal for so long is so like, I don't want to say it's narrow-minded, but it's very, I've had my eyes on the prize since I started this, which is just get to
1 million subscribers.
Like full-time income, doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I just never even thought about anything else because whenever I did, I would feel guilty that I wasn't working on my thing. And, you know, it's like, it's almost exact opposite of what you said. Now that I don't have a full-time job, I could dedicate every waking hour to this until I do it. And, you know, obviously it's taking a lot longer, but a lot of things that 2020 has taught me is balance. Cause we, you know, in addition to the whole world being
losing its balance.
We had a lot of tragedy this year. It was like a really hard year for us. Yeah. And I think I got to a point where I was like, I want to be in control. And if I can't be in control in a world that I knew, then how would I be in control in this new world that is totally unknown? And so now I'm exercising every day, 60 days in a row, learning Japanese, like exploring new shows, playing video games. Like I haven't played a video game forever. Like, you know, we have a new dog. I kind of want a third one. Like there's
what kind of about that income.
And I want to travel as soon as we can. Like there's it's like I allowed myself to think about other things that were not dreams about the business. Like, okay, I want to get an office space at some point. Like I want to hire somebody. Like these are always the dreams that I have been thinking about. And it's so nice to to be like, oh, I guess, being married does that. It's like, well, what are we going to do as a couple to, like what goals do we have as a couple? So anyway, long story short, my goal is to definitely still have a full-time, sustainable, stable income doing the thing that I love, which is still teaching people to share their stories on YouTube. That's still my thing. I love doing that. But I also want to, because there's stability, it doesn't mean that I am now going to put more time, like more of my free time into work. It's now I'm going to put that free time into things that have nothing to do with work. And I just have never had that balance before, ever. It's always like, oh my gosh, work on everything, make as many videos as I can, burn out, recover, and then do it all over again, which is like stupid. So
it's impractical. But I think and that's the thing, like, we'll see where it goes from here. I feel like that's a very modest dream. Like that's
I know. Well, I'm excited because it's so doable. I'm like, okay, we're on the same page. Cool.
But these aren't like, when you're a kid and I'm going to have 16 mansions.
$1 million.
In every room, I'm going to have a trampoline room and my own personal in and out and all this stuff, which sure, cool. But I mean, we're talking about things that aren't in the grand scheme of the world where, I feel like these are relatively achievable goals, I think. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin and Dan?
Oh yeah,
I think that like my dream isn't the Team 10 house,
That's my nightmare.
Exactly. But I mean, and that's like, there's even like more milder versions of those creator houses and stuff. And I'm not against them. I think they're totally, fine. They're just doing what they feel like needing to do to build their career. But all that to say, if you were to say, hey, Dan, here's your $2 million a year for the rest of the year, but you have to be creative or you have to do something, I think that would open up so much to me, because there are so many things that I want to learn, like woodworking. I would love it if I could do woodworking and like have a channel where I'm like, I'm going to make this table and here's how I did it. It looks crappy, but I did it myself. And, and you got to watch me do it. Or baking. I've been getting really into baking lately. Like I'm not a baker, but you want to watch me bake this? Now I can afford a kitchen that's big enough to film me do this kind of thing in. Or beekeeping. Like I've been watching Emmy Made in Japan's beekeeping channel on YouTube.
I heard of this.
I found her through her beekeeping channel actually, before I found that she had another like food tasting cooking channel. And but I've always been curious and wanted to learn about beekeeping. There's like all these like things I kind of want to learn how to do, but living in a little apartment in Los Angeles, you really are limited to the space to doing things that you have the space to do them in. And that's, you can do anything on a computer. So fortunately I was able to produce a podcast. I'm able to live stream onto Twitch. But there are other things I would really love to do. You can't keep bees in a little apartment. But I will say that the other thing is that while, as you talked about earlier, like having a sustainable, and you can't beat the peace of mind a sustainable income gives you.
Yeah, it's very valuable.
It's so valuable, because I've been there. Because when I was making my podcast at first, I was still like a temp job. I drove Lyft. There was like long days where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, this month. And that's so stressful, but I was still trying to be creative on the side. So I'm not going to say that affected my creativity in a necessarily negative way, but it definitely, it's hard to imagine, like, I don't know, what am I trying to say actually? Having a sustainable income is such a blessing. Yeah. I do not want to take that for granted. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, if there was that kind of peace of mind for the rest of my life, I think that I'm not a real extravagant person. I could have something very simple as long as I didn't have any concerns. Because one of the best things that's happened to me since I started really investing in these digital creative realm is the people I've met. I've made so many good friends through Twitch. I can't tell you the people who came into my chat, who became regulars in my chat. We've met in person. We were talking about this last night. Like they've met each other now. Like we ended up kind of creating this community where people were meeting each other in the community that you got started, which is so nice to hear about. Like they've become really good friends with each other, and I can't pass that up. Like that's what I really love, and I think that's where. This is going to sound really cheesy, but I think that's where like the value in living is the relationships you make and helping people and make stronger relationships. And that's one of the things that this creative realm of like YouTube and Twitch and or even the podcast, the internet is that's one of the most positive things that can happen is because I have friends, through my podcast, I made a friend in Kuwait who now is in my Twitch chat all the time. And so cool. I have friends in Australia, East Asia. I have friends from all around the world that, you can't pass it up. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, anyways.
The time to like value that and to focus on cultivating that. And, and that is a tough thing because when you talk to someone and they're like, what do you do? And you're like, well, like I'm building communities and working with people from all over the world to sort of like explore stuff we're passionate about. And they're like,
it sounds lame to like non-creators.
Well, it's also like cool. So like, how do you pay for food like and
totally
stuff?
Foreign.
And it's like, no, but there's like an intangible value there that you can't understand.
It's like hard to describe. You have to just know it. You have to.
If you haven't experienced or been a part of it, either as the person, like Dan just said, you're the glue that sort of created this thing that people can exist in, or you're one of those people who's like part of something and you connect with it in a very real way. That's a really magical thing, and it doesn't just have to be from like a record company or like, no offense, but a giant entertainment conglomerate decides like this is the thing that everyone's going to connect with. It can just be anybody through their computer in their apartment, their bedroom, wherever.
Yeah. I think that I just want somewhere cozy. Like it doesn't have to be. I think I align with you guys, and like it doesn't have to be this like amazing mansion, but again, like if someone gave me like
you don't want yachts. Like yachts out of
I don't my goodness,
yeah, I know,
and then escape during a pandemic on my yacht
to your private island.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think if someone had given me $2 million a year, I think it would be kind of just
that for me. Sorry to interrupt. That would almost be like too much. I don't think.
Yeah, I need. It was just to like. Money's not an issue, so you don't have to say like I need to earn money from cultivating a community, but the freedom to say like cultivating a community is really valuable to me. Like that's something I want to
like a stable income. Yeah, I think there's actually quite a few things that I would probably do. I think the grassroots are the channel. I mean, I guess I don't know if I touched on this point, but I had a lot of designer friends in the corporate world, and small businesses and just mid-sized businesses. And I would be like, oh yeah, can you, do you think you can make that web banner? They're like, oh, I don't know how to design for, web specifications. And I'm like, well, but I mean, you can learn to do, you could just
like this afternoon.
Yeah. Like that shouldn't be the roadblock to your creativity. What I'm saying. It's like the mindset should be, I'm going to go figure it out. Or it shouldn't be like, I can't imagine it in my head. Therefore, as a creative, I'm unable to do it. And I found that was such a big problem. I feel like, creativity is so, there's so much there's so much around creativity in these businesses nowadays that everyone wants something to look a certain way. They want it to be a certain in a certain like process. And so then you do have these new creatives that are just specializing only in this, and they only do UI design, or they only do motion graphics, or they only do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do feel that when they try to think outside, which is kind of more you pigeonhole yourself and you limit your creativity, and you're almost like bottlenecked to where like, in the long run, for me, it happened to me. I felt like I was kind of like, oh, I guess I don't know how to be. It's almost like it's not freeing. You're almost like chained by your own ambitions to be more creative. And so I guess what my goal would want to be is to just introduce people that, it shouldn't be a burden to be creative. If there's something that you don't know, it shouldn't be a roadblock. It should be a challenge, and it could be something that you can overcome, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. Even though it won't live up to your ambitions and it won't live up to what you're imagining in your head, don't let it stop you. there's always still some sort of creative and some art in whatever you end up making, even though it just, like Dan saying, like, you want to watch me, cook or, bake in the kitchen or do some word work. Like, I think that there's so much to be said for just trying, and having the mindset of being positive to like think, hey, I could learn something new, especially in creative experimentation. So
it reminds me of that quote of this. I think about this quote all the time, but it's like, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you really don't want to do something, you'll find an excuse.
Exactly. And exactly. I think, I just would love to turn that mindset and just help, people just become more creative. Because I think it makes
to me, it's like, okay, if you are, who is it that, was it someone that you met? Maybe it was a student or someone in a group chat that was like, maybe someone who was leaving a comment on your video that was like, oh yeah, I really want to do this thing, and you're like, oh yeah, you can with this thing.
I talk about this story all the time.
Maybe you've already told it on the podcast.
I have a couple of times, but I was in a Facebook group for like YouTube channels,
that's
and this guy, I think I just did last week's episode talking about this, but the short story is this guy was like, I really want to start my channel, but I just have this gear and I'm not sure what to do. And I was like, oh, well, with what you have, you could set it up this way and it'd be great. And he was like, yeah, but the sound's not really good here. And I was like, well, you could go outside and, you're doing like, you want to do an outdoor channel anyway. So being outdoors would actually be pretty great. And he's like, no, I forget the exact quotes or whatever, but it was basically every problem he had. I set up a very achievable solution, like actionable that day, and it was everything. And I could have said, I'll give you millions of dollars a year to just sit here and do your thing in a perfectly curated environment. And he'd be like, yeah, but I can't, because there was, at a certain point, you're your own worst enemy of just, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that.
Well, all right then.
That's actually kind of reminds me of a lot of times when I'll be streaming on Twitch, where someone will pop in my chat. It may even be someone I've known for a while who said, man, I just wish I could do this. I want to start a Twitch channel, and I'm always like, you can do it. Like, you can stream.
Do it.
You can do it. Xbox One. Yeah. Or you have a PS4, which, by the way, a lot of gamers have those systems.
Yeah.
Then you can do it. And that's how I did it. Sure, it might not be like what you're envisioning, but it's so much fun even. And I would tell them, because I did it. I'm not lying when I tell them that streaming from just my PlayStation 4 was just so much fun for me. And I think that's what should be the most important thing, because if you're not having fun in your Twitch channel, no one's going to want to watch you.
Thousands. I know. Fun.
Like, I think it's great to strive for standards, but I think the roadblock is people just are in their head way too long. Like, I do this too.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, I'm so guilty. Everyone at this table
I'm like,
we're not in our heads.
I really want it to look a certain way, and that's such a preventative to like doing or accomplishing anything. And then it's like when you actually do it, you're like, oh, this just doesn't look good. But I mean, that happens every single time. It's never going to be exactly how you imagined it in your head. But the amazing thing is that because you actually did it, you did it. And that's really what counts.
That's how it was with the Just One Thing podcast. That first episode was decent. I was just glad to have it out there.
Yeah, that's a huge step.
Yeah, but it was also like one of those things where I could listen to it and I go, gosh, that wasn't great. That wasn't like what I envisioned, or it doesn't sound like how what sounded in my head, or what we were trying to come up with an audible word for.
Not envision.
A mental audio thing, but anyway.
Or sensory.
It wasn't how I expected it to sound. I wanted it to sound like way more professional.
Right.
But as I mentioned, I'm not a sound engineer, so I had to learn these like little tweaks with what I had, and eventually, after several tries, it started to sound like closer and closer. And there would be days where I would like read the copy of my podcast and then listen back to the recording and go, that was so crappy, I'm re-recording it, and then scrap it and then re-record it after adjusting some settings. So a few trial and errors, but like you said, like where if you want to do something, you're going to do it. Well, what is it you said? Like where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't want to do something, you'll find an excuse. Yeah. I don't know who said that. That's a quote for sure.
But that's so good, because it's so true.
Well, because now when I heard it, it's like because what we do is so unique. Whenever we meet someone, we talk about what we do. Like, people will always say, like, "Oh, I always thought about blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "So why don't you?" And then it's like, "Oh, kids, this, that." Oh, well, you're just listing out excuses that, you know I don't have kids, but there are plenty of people who do and are still doing it. So.
And there's people who actually, you know, they still try to do whatever. Everyone's dealt different cards, you know? So...
Conversation for another day.
Exactly. It's another topic.
It's funny though, because that does go right into a thing that I always go over with my students, because when they show work in class, we have to go over like how to pitch a project, because their big thing is to always like, well, okay, this is the project, but the camera's like out of focus a little bit, and we kind of ran out of time.
They give
and this,
all these disclaimers.
yeah, and I'm like, why are you telling us how terrible it is before we've even seen it? Like, let us watch it. We might not even notice the thing that's bothering you, because you have to remember, like, your audience is only going to see the thing for what it is. They don't know what was originally in your head. And so I've even drawn it out a few times for them. There's like a Venn diagram where one circle is what you imagine, the other circle is what you actually made. And when you're just starting out, there might not overlap at all, hardly. It doesn't mean that the thing you actually made is even bad. It's just, for you, it's frustrating because you're like, it should have been like this, and it's not, now it's like that. But somebody else is going to be like, this is pretty cool for just what it is.
It's so subjective. Creativity is so subjective. And I just wish more people would know. Like, you know, you could think this plant right here is a work of art, and I could
some people would be like, it's dying.
I guess it's dying, you know, but like it's so subjective.
And that happens, I mean, in the YouTube comments, there'll be a video where the same video, someone's like, this is a complete waste of time, shut this guy up. And the person right below it, like, you just saved my life. I can't believe, I'm so glad I found this. And it's like, it's the same video.
It's that polarizing thing about the internet.
And the more that you do give yourself time to practice, then your Venn diagram circles can come closer together. And it does become easier to go, okay, this is what I have in mind. This is how I can come close to achieving it. And I think that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for your time today. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to, you know, let people know where they can find you, plug whatever you want to plug. And I strongly urge whoever's listening to check out work by every single person at this table, especially me. I'm just kidding, because you're on so Heather, where do you want people to find you?
At Heather Just Create on YouTube and Instagram.
Yay. And Kevin, where can people find you?
You can find me at Kev and Ram. That's KEVANDRAM. Kevin and Ramirez at YouTube. So youtube.com/KevinRam.
That was pro. You said this is your first podcast, and that was such a pro plug. Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me at Just One Thing DM on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter. So yeah,
you got the handle on like all the platforms.
I tried to.
That's good.
To get it. Yeah.
All right, and of course you can find me at Soder and Tom, or check out youtube.com/TomBuck. And thank you for listening. Thank you to my incredible roundtable of guests.
Yes.
And I will see you next week.